Oh man, we're doing this, aren't we? Okay, so, Marvel needs no intro. They took the world by storm, they're about to cap a decade of work off at Endgame, so it's time to take a look back and see how the MCU has handled their villains up until now. I plan on giving the same treatment to the heroes, but I think it'll be more fun to talk about the villains of Marvel first. And by fun, I mean you can listen to me trying to find the good in these characters, because a lot of them are... well... I mean, they exist and all. Please note that this is strictly my opinion and my experiences with the characters. If you like someone that I don't, awesome, more power to you. I'll be judging these characters based on their own deeds, how much of a threat they were to the hero, and their personality and character in general. I'm going to make each entry as brief as I can since we have 19 characters to cover. Also, I'm only doing one villain per movie, so if I talk about Iron Man 2, I would only mention either Whiplash or Justin Hammer. Without further ado, here's my personal list leading to my favorite Marvel villain. Darrin Cross is a special kind of bad. If you have to rip off your own villains to fill in a plot, the result will not end well. He's just your stereotypical business baddie who wants even more power and ends up having a suit that's the evil version of the good guy suit. Cross is not alone in this issue, but he's definitely the most boring and uninterested one. We've seen his trope of villain done better in most forms of media, and honestly, the only evil deed I could remember from the guy was when he tortured sheep. There's nothing noteworthy about him. I had to Google search his name because calling him Yellow Jacket is an insult to the Yellow Jacket I know and love. His suit looks cool and the final battle was fun and quirky, but that's it. He does nothing to stand out in not only the Ant-Man movie, but he's one of the worst parts in the MCU in general. We all have to start from somewhere, but it's a shame this list has to start with someone who really doesn't have a purpose to exist aside from forced conflict. Spoilers for Captain Marvel coming up. If you don't want to get spoiled, go to this time in the video. Jude Law. I know his character has a name, but I can't remember it, so I'm calling him Jude Law. Like with Ant-Man, the main villain doesn't really feel involved with the hero. He's just there. I mean, Jude is Carol's mentor, and there's a nice twist in the movie that solidifies how manipulative he is. Here's the main problem though. For most of the movie, we were led to believe the Skrulls were the bad guys, so when Jude is revealed to be the big bad, we haven't had any time to get to know his true side. I understand that a second watch of the movie will probably show more depth to his character, but upon doing that, I still didn't find him interesting. He talks and acts like every evil generic soldier, and when it comes to opposing Captain Marvel, he gets a 1-minute action scene but is then taken out like a bitch. The movie kept building up how Carol was going to surpass her mentor by releasing her emotional restraint, but the result was so unsatisfying. I was tempted to put the Supreme Intelligence on here, but all it does is talk as well. Jude Law did more, but he was pretty boring to watch, even after knowing the twist. I feel like we got blue-balled because the Skrulls could have easily been one of the best villains in the MCU. The potential was there, but since we had a minion be the main villain for the sake of a plot twist, Captain Marvel won't have anyone to pose a challenge until she meets Thanos. From Doctor Strange, behold, the villain whose name you probably don't remember. Surprise, it's Mary. Or if you want to translate that in the language of weakness, it's Caecilius. Now, the largest issue with this guy is that he's so bland. He's another evil clone of the good guy, but here's what the others had that Caecilius didn't. They were the central threat. In Doctor Strange, Caecilius is upstaged by Dormammu, and as much as I love Dormammu in other media, in this movie, it just appears and goes away as fast as a fart. This is the equivalent of Luke meeting Emperor Palpatine, but all the great is sucked away. That's the best analogy I can think of. Dormammu Dormammu does make Doctor Strange go through the ultimate torture, sacrifice, whatever, but he's only in the movie for the last 20 minutes. Caecilius was supposed to be the big bad, the Vader in this movie, but again, all the greatness and potential is left behind. I love Mads Mikkelsen. He's a good actor, but he was forced to play a role that offers no threat, no potential, and is extremely boring to watch. The only reason he's higher than Jude Law for me is because at least we have an established villain for most of the movie. That's it, but the problems are the same. Weak villain that does nothing impressive in the movie or against our hero. I suppose it's interesting that we have a devil worshipper as the bad guy, but that concept is the only thing slightly cool about Caecilius. Okay, so everything I said about Caecilius you can slap on Malekith. I'm serious. The hardest choice on this list was figuring out who the better villain was. Malekith or Caecilius? Well, at least Malekith stays as the villain the whole movie. He's not good at all, but at least the role of main villain is reserved by one person this time. Just like with Caecilius, Malekith is boring. He brings nothing new and belongs in a cheap Saturday morning cartoon given how simplistic he is. He wants to shroud the universe in darkness. Why? Because darkness is cool. Does he have a personality? Nope. He has no emotion and talks in Eddie Redmayne mumbles. Is he threatening in his feats? Well, he's responsible for being the first villain to bring Asgard to its knees, but the most memorable part of that battle, where Freya was killed, was because of a henchman. He's the first villain to use the power of an Infinity Stone to try and accomplish his goal, but he's stopped by tripods and a few bumbling scientists. Okay, with some better writing, that may work in something like JoJo, but in movie format, it makes Malekith look unthreatening. My largest complaint about him is that he's a leader that doesn't prove how or why he should be a leader. His greatest feats are done by his people, and when it comes time for his final battle, and it's supposed to show why he should be feared as the Dark Elf Master, he barely says anything and is snuffed out of the movie faster than that one time Bruce Wayne's parents went into an alley. An antagonist that is as bland as the color of their skin and doesn't say much, but apparently is one of the strongest forces around, that has a forced conflict with a lovable hero, so their clash feels empty. Where have I seen that kind of bad character before? So when Guardians first premiered, it was like the Avengers in terms of a shared opinion. The general consensus was that Guardians was a fun, refreshing superhero movie, and that its worst part was easily the villain Ronin. He falls victim to the trope where there is a larger threat behind him, and that's Thanos. Granted, Thanos was the looming threat since 2012, but since Thanos had a physical presence in Guardians, he easily outshined Ronin in his 2 cameos. Some of it was because we finally saw Thanos get fleshed out, but because he's there, he proves that Ronin isn't a threat. Ronin is another minion that is like Icarus. He flies too close to the sun and loses everything because of it. When Ronin has the Power Stone in his hammer and says that Thanos is on his kill list, that should have been a terrifying scene, solidifying how dangerous these Infinity Stones are. Instead, Thanos is like, "Try me, bitch," and just leaves. Ronin with an Infinity Stone is boring to Thanos, and because all Ronin does is boast in a single tone and is given no room to flesh his character out, he's boring to us as well. I guess it fits because a great enemy for the fun and wacky Guardian should be a stoic threat with great power, but Ronin was easily the worst part of the movie. He has a body count and a somewhat intimidating presence, but that's all we'll ever get. If your villain tells you that he wants to kill people but doesn't have a compelling reason why, then he becomes a one-dimensional character. It's like if Hannibal Lecter killed people but left out the cannibalism. What would make him special or stand out among others? Ronin falls in this category and is never given the chance or writing to get out of it. At least all the personality went into Yondu. Okay, so I'm going to cheat here. No joke, when it came to listing the Iron Man trilogy villains, they all lined up next to each other. The weakest one was Justin Hammer, followed by Killian, or the Mandarin, followed by the OG MCU baddie himself, Obadiah Stane. I didn't even intend to do that. Here's the thing though, thinking back while making this personal ranking, the Iron Man villains are the same character. I don't like Tony Stark, I want him dead for personal revenge, so I'll use his technology to become a threat, and even though I breathe some fresh air as a villain to make these movies a little better, my final battle will be largely disappointing aside from the theme music used in my fights. That's the core principle, and even though each of these villains are a little different, they all start to fall flat near the end. Stane was the best villain because he was the one established as the main threat in the first 10 minutes of Iron Man without anyone realizing it. He then worked in the background trying to find a way to deal with a new and improved Tony Stark while also trying to get his position of power attained. I mean, he becomes a cartoon character at the end of Iron Man, but I liked him. We've reached the point on this list where the villains start to be entertaining and interesting. Killian and Hammer, though, are not, forced to be left behind. I don't really care for them, and I find their motivations weak in the context of their films, but at least the actors are trying to make it work. They're fun to watch, can be threatening, and have a lot more personality than half of this list. My problem, though, is that they're stuck in movies that don't allow them to take center stage when needed to. Justin Hammer's stuck in the same league as Whiplash, which is just sad, but with Killian, he's kept as the behind-the-scenes mastermind, like a modern Disney movie. Killian is the twist villain when it should have been Ben Kingsley as the Mandarin, so we once again don't get enough time to know what Killian is really like. By the way, that still irks me. Mandarin was the leader of the Ten Rings and could have been a great closer for Tony's character in his own trilogy, but nope! We have to believe that the man who is left on a rooftop on New Year's Eve is the most dangerous mastermind Tony Stark has to face. Oh no, Tony left me to get laid even though I have no personal connection to him whatsoever. Better become a supervillain that leads a terrorist organization that kidnaps the president, and now I can breathe fire! As ridiculous as that is, I wish the premise wasn't just the cool part. Stane was a little too wacky at the end, but I will forever love the scene where he paralyzes Tony and rubs one last screw you in his face before taking everything. So Hammer and Killian, they tried but didn't work for me. Obadiah Stane though, a step in the right direction. Okay, so Ant-Man and the Wasp, under no circumstances could have made a villain worse than Darrin Cross. Before I saw the movie, I was so worried. I went into the theater, and to my surprise, I actually really liked Ghost. Like Bucky, Ghost was an assassin that was used as a weapon and nothing else. Thanks to her powers though, she's constantly at risk to lose herself in reality. Her phases and distortions are really unique for a Marvel villain. To see each different distortion do a different action instead of simply trailing Ghost is a silent but interesting look into her character. She's a tortured weapon on the last bit of life support, and all she wants is to be fixed. But since she's trained in the ways of evil, she doesn't know a better solution other than violent means. What holds Ghost back for me is that her resolution felt a little rushed, and she had to share the screen with a really stupid villain. What was his name? I'm calling him Southern Idiot. The fact that such an interesting character had to share the title villain to Southern Idiot instead of keeping the screen time to herself is frankly dumb. I wish we saw more of Ghost. I mean, what we got was really unique since we didn't have a villain that wanted to, well, you know,
take over the world.
And she really didn't want to kill anyone out of revenge. This is just the twisted story of I want to be human again. Her tragic character is kept behind the comedy layer this movie has, but I really liked Ghost. She was a refreshing character, and even though she could have had more time dedicated to her, I am happy with what I saw. Such a shame that we won't see more of it in the future. Fun fact, Captain America the First Avenger was the first Marvel movie I saw in theaters. I had a pretty good time. Theater wasn't packed, I thought the movie was fun, the post-credits scene got me hyped, and the Red Skull was played by Hugo Weaving. What's not to love? Remember when I said that Malekith never proved himself as to why he should be the leader of an evil group? Red Skull shows why. Throughout the film, Skull makes his ambitions known. He will kill and belittle because he believes he's doing the right thing. Yes, he's your Nazi villain that wants to
take over the world.
However, what makes him different is that he truly believes himself to be the better man. He is superior to the human race because he took a super soldier serum. It's easy to see why Hydra became a menacing force under his leadership, and it's easy to see why it expanded even after Red Skull is gone. Thanks to an Infinity Stone, he believes that he controls. His weapons outgun any the world could ever know. All that being said, why shouldn't he be the king? What makes Red Skull work for me is not only the build-up he gets in the movie, but he's the perfect villain for Captain America. You know how we have the legendary hero and villain relationships like Batman and Joker, Sherlock and Moriarty, and Spider-Man and Green Goblin? The same can be said for Red Skull and Captain America. Their personalities are exact opposites of each other, so to see them clash on screen is really cool, and it's something that barely any superhero movie has touched upon other than The Dark Knight. My only complaint though is that when it comes time for the final battle, Skull does lose some points. The build-up was excellent, but the payoff was lacking. He spends the fight talking, and it takes one shield throw to take him down until Infinity War. I really wanted Skull to get more action in the movie. The first scene of the movie shows that perfectly, and I love the bridge interaction he and Steve have. But like most Marvel villains, the satisfying third act is something to be desired. Oh well, maybe it's the nostalgia that's bumping Red Skull up so high, but I loved seeing Hugo Weaving giving this character life. Also, he has one of my favorite lines in movie history.
You are failing!
The apparent best Marvel movie villain we've had for, like, ever, and he's only number 9 on my list. In many regards, he does the whole villain shtick right. He has personality, he can be intimidating, it takes the Avengers to stop his plans, he's interesting, has complexion in his character. I don't even really need to explain why he's been so popular over the years. It's like if I tried to do a character study on Mario, there's just no point. That being said though, I thought he could be a bit more menacing. In other media, his powers and magic make him alone a threat for the Avengers. But in the MCU, just about every character with a name gets to have a shot at him and win. I mean, it's satisfying that everyone gets payback against Loki for all the manipulation he's done, but in terms of being the Avengers' greatest threat, at the time, he barely stands on his own merit. Hell, even against other villains, I doubt he could hold his own, and that's what holds him back. Loki does everything right except get a win. You can be as awesome of a villain you want, but what's the point if you don't really accomplish anything and you constantly play second fiddle to other villains who I will be covering later. Now this does not mean I hate Loki. Hell, he's number 9 for a reason. I just wish that he got to be more villainous and victorious rather than being reduced to a background character with a little mischief. Though it is hilarious that whenever he sees Hulk, he gets PTSD. Regardless, I'm keeping it very brief on Loki since we all know what he's about, but in terms of villains, he could have done his job a little better. He wasn't bad, don't get me wrong. He just lacked the follow-through. I refuse to give, Spindly Johnny here any recognition. Compared to his predecessor and even the cameo known as Zola, this guy is a flop. Just like Malekith, he's another leader villain that likes to talk and doesn't do anything. Now the Winter Soldier, on the other hand, oh, this is getting good. Now, a lot of complaints I had against villains so far was that there wasn't enough time given to them so that they could stand out more or have some character development. Bucky, though, is the exception to the rule. He didn't have the majority of screen time, but each time he's on screen or when he's talked about sends chills down my spine. I wanted to see more from villains like Ghost because, hey, she has a unique power that should be explored. With Bucky, though, he's just a guy with a metal arm. I mean, he's one of the most dangerous sharpshooters and fighters around, but you can't really have a superhero movie villain whose main gimmick is a metal arm. So what do? Only show him when needed, make him have 2 serious action scenes that can fully utilize Bucky at his deadliest. Throw in some compelling character drama due to brainwashing and a need to kill, and Bucky is easily one of the best parts about Captain America's second movie. I said this already, but he and Ghost have the same basic backstory, a tortured weapon, but instead of looking to be fixed, this is the worst case scenario where the brainwashing is complete. And when even Black Widow is like, yeah, I can't take this guy on, you know you're setting up something pretty cool. As the villain, Bucky pushes Steve to his limit. He's mostly silent, but that's what adds to the creep factor. What words can be said? Why would they be needed? There is only the mission, and I'm the best person for the job. He's formidable, scary, and is an actual threat to the Avengers. There's a reason the Captain America sequel was named after Bucky. I wanted to so desperately put Jeff Goldblum on here. I mean, when he does stuff like this.
Sweet little, who's gonna get him first?
How can I not recognize that? Oh well, I'll leave him as an honorable mention. Hela, though, is a different character altogether. Some weren't happy that Hela, in their eyes, was a one-dimensional villain that did evil things because the plot demanded it. For me, though, this is Loki perfected, an Asgardian villain that's threatening, powerful, has a personality, an appropriate final challenge for the Thor trilogy, and is actually a little complex. Before this movie came out, we all just assumed that Asgard was this paradise, a peaceful home for its people that just happened to be protected by very powerful beings. Hela, though, shows us the truth. Asgard wasn't born a happy place full of sunshine and rainbows and unicorns, whatever. It was a place that was conquered and made upon the blood of countless people. Hela, who was raised to be a warrior, did what she only thought was right, keep the conquest going throughout the universe. Odin, though, started to get compassionate and decided to banish Hela. Once he died, though, Hela could break free and renew her domination throughout the 9 realms. Her issue and why she's legitimately angry at her home is because they forgot about her. Hela was erased from Asgard's history even though it was founded largely by her. Now, when I say that she's Loki perfected, it isn't just in the green design. It's because she never really lost to Thor. Her skill is practically unparalleled as she single-handedly brought Asgard to its knees. Even in the end, Thor couldn't beat her. It took a prophecy and real-life spirit of Clancy Brown to take Hela down once and for all. The most common flaw is that, of course, she didn't have the movie all to herself. We got Jeff Goldblum too. But I honestly can't find a reason to be mad at that. Goldblum is so tonally different from Hela, and he works on his own through his awkward comedy. It's because of Goldblum that Hela is kept in the shadows, but I don't hate Goldblum. I loved him as the Grandmaster. Honestly, if Hela was the only villain, she might get higher on my list. But what she brought to the table in the screen time she had was still satisfying. Oh, you thought I was going to pick Zemo or even put Ross in here? No. Zemo makes no sense as a villain, as how he accomplishes his goal is too unrealistic for even the MCU and is the Marvel equivalent of Lex Luthor from Batman v Superman. And Ross was just a delightful cameo. The real villain is Tony Stark, as he's the main threat to Steve in Civil War. I mean, the makings of a villain are there. He tries to keep the Avengers under his thumb, recruits a teenager for the sake of being an extra superhuman to throw in the battle, constantly gets in the way of Captain America, and wants to flat out murder another man without remorse, despite knowing in the back of his head the truth. Some can say that Captain America was the villain of Civil War, but that's because he never admitted that Bucky killed Tony's parents. That's not really a villain thing, it's a lapse in judgment. Tony, though, brought actual consequences and came damn close to crossing the line in multiple scenarios multiple times. What makes Civil War such an interesting movie for me is that it makes the founder of the MCU a villain. We all know deep down Tony isn't, but he's been put in a dark time of his life, so to see him crack with Captain America makes Tony one of the most relatable antagonists. He's a human that's been dealt a bad hand in business and has been betrayed in personal life. He wants to make the world better but has a flawed vision to do so. This makes Tony a hell of a lot better than the villains I mentioned earlier. I commend the Russo brothers for not having Tony just turn bad guy for the sake of the movie having a villain. Like this idiot. It's all about the relatable human nature of Tony that makes him such an interesting character as a hero and as a man trying to conquer his fears that haunted him since Iron Man 3. We all have dark periods in life, so to see that happen to a superhero? That's really cool. The final battle with Iron Man is one of my favorite fights in the MCU. Tony collapses into killer mode and almost succeeds. In the end though, Tony kind of wins. Cap is forced to live in exile and Iron Man becomes the symbol of Earth's heroes. Neither side feels good about it, but Tony still won. And people said Thanos was the first MCU villain to win at the end. I could go on for a lot longer in this character essay, but regardless, Iron Man made the perfect villain in Captain America's final standalone movie. At least they got better though by Endgame. Oh my god, he's so dead. James freaking Spader. Do I need to say anything else? The man was practically born to be a supervillain. When Age of Ultron came out, I think it was during his peak on the TV show Blacklist. Spader's the main character, but he's also the ultimate criminal. Like, he's really good. So when that first trailer dropped and Spader said,
"I'm gonna show you something beautiful,"
I was hooked. Ultron is a little strange. Created through an Infinity Stone by Tony Stark and Bruce Banner, Ultron has this hybrid personality. His plans and desires are determined by his cold AI logic, but whenever he interacts with someone, he acts human. I think Joss Whedon made that decision because if we had another robot villain that didn't do anything except talk like this, humans must die, blah blah blah, it'd be pretty boring. I find Ultron to be really interesting. A lot of people don't give him credit because he was in a bad movie, but I personally like Age of Ultron. I find the fact that Ultron wants to kill everyone and yet needs someone to talk to is fascinating. He can't just up and kill people because then they would be remembered as symbols and martyrs. No, Ultron wants to break the world in poetic fashion. He wants to make the world end by making the Avengers fail and fall apart. Ultron isn't the villain, the Avengers are. They have to get out of the way if Ultron wants to save the world. He also has this Bible obsession, but I think it fits his character. I don't remember the specific name, but Ultron is one of those servants who is willing to do anything if it means eternal life. In this case, make heroes go extinct to prevent the end of the world that is coming. My favorite speech from Ultron was when he said this:
"There were more than a dozen extinction-level events before even the dinosaurs got theirs. When the Earth starts to settle, God throws a stone at it. And believe me, he's winding up."
Ultron isn't just using the Bible to sound menacing, he's foreshadowing Thanos. The robot was born from the Mind Stone. He knows what's up and knows what's going to happen. The human race has to be restarted before it's too late. That's what I find fascinating about him. He's inspired and acts like the worst of our kind, only to then say, "No, I'm doing this because I'm trying to save you all from something worse." Either way, we weren't ready. Also, Ultron has one thing going for him that barely anyone else on this list has managed: a lasting impact. Thanks to Ultron, Phase 3 is a thing. The Civil War meeting Claw that will set up Black Panther, Infinity War's build-up, the death of half the universe. Ultron is the gateway to arguably the final and best phase of the MCU. And thanks to his vibranium suit, he's easily one of the Avengers' toughest enemies. He also had an interesting debate with Vision at the end of the movie about life and how everyone is doomed. That's how you go out. Not with a whimper, but saying, "You stopped me, but now you stopped yourselves." Why Ultron gets a bad rep is a mystery that I'll probably never solve, but what he did and left behind is still felt to this day. Also, he's the most realistic villain ever. I mean, think about it. He spent some time on the internet and because of it hates humanity. Makes sense to me. Did you ever meet that one guy in high school who had a certain charm about him, but then he reveals himself as a psycho? That's Ego. When it was announced that Ego the Living Planet would be the villain of Guardians 2, I was skeptical. I mean, in comics, the guy is, well, a planet. Were we gonna do like a Transformers the movie bit where there's another villain but he answers to a planet-shaped villain? Was that going to be Guardians 2? I mean, if anyone could make it work, it would be James Gunn, but I wasn't sure. Then the trailer came out and Ego was just another guy and I lost a little hope. After seeing the movie though and looking back, Ego is an absolute monster. The guy is a serial seducer but on a universal scale. He wants to plant his essence in women across the universe while also using that same essence to one day explode and absorb everything. That is Thanos levels of threat right there. What makes Ego different is that even though he is a villain, we wanted to believe that he was going to be a great dad for Peter, the only offspring that is able to withstand Ego's power. The power of an ancient race that explains how Peter's different than any other human being. But he then shows his hand and that Peter is of course nothing more than a tool, just like women to him. Ego sees life in general as his plaything, and once beings are done being sex objects, Ego gets rid of them. The most dangerous villains in any story are the ones who believe what they're doing is right. Ego doesn't have to answer to any choice of morality. His bloodline, his very being is on a different scale than anyone else. Since he's so superior, he truly believes he's the only one that can make the universe a better place. Now, we would have a villain that handled this approach a little better, but Ego is still a great villain. His power is monumental, the connection he had to Peter is tragic, and how he goes down is still one of my favorite moments in the entire MCU. Ego had no right to be a good villain, but with a little charisma mixed in with the serial killer's desire to make everything his own, and you have a villain you won't be able to forget. Okay, so you know how I just said that the most dangerous villains are the ones who believe they're right? Well, in Killmonger's case, he is right. He's a product born from the mistakes of people who could make the world better and the centuries worth of racism and slavery. Killmonger does a lot of things right as a villain. He makes you think, he's believable in his actions, he's threatening and very intimidating. You know what he's about, but his plans and thoughts on life seem to come out of nowhere. For instance, there's this one girl that has this relationship with Killmonger. Okay, so she must be pretty special, or she gets gunned down. Okay, so Killmonger goes to Wakanda. He's been waiting and training for this moment his entire life. He has volunteered in the art of killing and warfare, all so that he's ready to take the throne, which he does. Next move? Genocide. Killmonger is a symbol of hatred. You know how Batman is defined by the death of his parents, so he became this symbol of fear? With Killmonger, he's defined by the misfortune of his people, so he bears that weight on himself. He has no other path he can walk on. Had he been shown a better path, there might have been a chance for Killmonger to have a life. But thanks to our world, he's a lost cause. That's the theme of T'Challa and Killmonger's relationship. Since Civil War, the Black Panther has learned to forgive and to be better. What happens when he meets someone that can't be saved, who has been absorbed by the worst worst of humanity and can match him blow for blow in combat. And there's also the fact that Black Panther can never match how good Killmonger looks. When you can realistically pull off Vegeta armor and be as threatening as the Saiyan Prince himself, you know you did something right. There's a reason Killmonger has been called one of, if not the best, MCU villain. The character is rooted in complexity. We want to see Killmonger see the error in his ways. It was set up at the end of Black Panther. We don't want to see another young man lose his life in the ways of hatred and through the mistakes of the past. Killmonger, though, can't change. He doesn't have the capacity for it anymore. Stuck on a quest for vengeance, and he knew it led to one outcome. In his last moments, Killmonger says one of the most thought-provoking statements in superhero movies.
Just bury me in the ocean with my ancestors that jumped from the ships. Because they knew death was better than bondage.
That was from Disney. Disney! An adult man with adult teachings, but it was all trapped in a vortex of hate. Killmonger will stay as one of my favorite villains for a long time. With a classic death scene, all I can say in its wake is, damn. Oh, Michael Keaton, can you do no wrong? That doesn't count. So, Spider-Man Homecoming was interesting when it was first announced. I was excited because it's a true Marvel Spider-Man movie, but then the villain was revealed. Vulture. I thought to myself then, really? The Vulture? In most media I saw growing up, the Vulture is either a joke villain or a grumpy old man that can fly. The only other time I saw him be any different was when he was a psychotic grandpa off his meds. So how in the hell was Marvel, a movie studio that at this time didn't master the art of making good villains yet, supposed to make the Vulture a compelling character and an actual threat? Well, leave it to Michael Keaton, of course. He's had experience with costume birds before. If there's one thing Vulture and Killmonger have in common, it's that they're relatable. Vulture was just your average construction worker trying to make a living for his family. It's all he has in this strange new world of aliens and superpowers. But when Tony Stark came into the picture for literal damage control, Vulture lost his job. That is, until he kept some of the alien tech from the first Avengers movie and has used every attack on Earth since to stockpile more dangerous tech. He becomes the leader of a high-tech black market, and even though what he's doing is wrong, the man is still working for his family. It's the only thing important to him, and he makes that clear multiple times. Now, what makes Vulture an awesome villain on top of that is that he's smart. Most villains on here are like, ha 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 ha, I will rule the world because I have the technology and power to do so. Kneel before me, you helpless whelp. Vulture, though, even if he's a significant threat with his group alone, doesn't want to fight any superheroes. He knows how tough they are, he knows what they're capable of. But even though he can't really tank through any of the Avengers, he can still sell weapons under their nose and be smart about it. It also helps that the Vulture is full on ready to murder someone if a secret is about to be exposed. So he's intimidating and has proved himself a threat in his suit. That first time where Vulture flies out of nowhere, grabs Peter, takes off in the sky, the music is blasting everywhere, and the camera is shaking everywhere, but the focus on Vulture is clear. Oh, that was good. Now, for most of the movie, Vulture is kept in the background, keeping to his profile, but what skyrockets him to number 2 on my list is, well, you guys probably know this scene already.
He must be Peter.
This freaking twist, it's so good! Not since Obadiah's Stain have I feared for a character when their secret identity is busted, and it was great seeing Vulture realistically work out who Spider-Man is, and then at the stoplight where the green light shines on his face and then the music blasts at the prom and this scene is perfect! It doesn't stop there. Vulture gives Spider-Man an ultimatum, but Peter, being the goody two-shoes of course, doesn't listen and falls right into Vulture's contingency plan to get rid of Spider-Man. So all of that made Vulture my favorite MCU villain. Well, I mean, he was until you know who, but still. If I had to shave any points away for any reason, well, his final fight was a return to form. A poor and silly fight, even though the stakes and the atmosphere was set. But that's my only complaint. It was surreal to see a supervillain be such a down-to-earth family man. If he was bombastic like the others, I have a feeling he wouldn't have made it as high on this list as he did. Rock on, Vulture. See you in that possible Sinister Six movie that might never happen. We made it. Number 1. Or you just skipped the entire video by clicking to this point. It was because I made Loki number 9, wasn't it? Oops! Spoilers. Or maybe you wanted to see if I was going to be the most predictable guy ever, and you're right, my favorite Marvel movie villain is Thanos. We can chalk it up to practically anything. A decade of build-up that did not disappoint, easily the toughest villain we've ever seen in the MCU. His battles are legendary, his motivation is demented yet believable, and let's just face it, until Darkseid gets a proper movie debut, there won't ever be a villain like Thanos. A common complaint for villains in the MCU, and I brought it up a lot, was that they didn't have enough screen time. Well, in Infinity War, it's Thanos' movie. He's the protagonist, and he wins in the end. I mean, we could say that Tony won, Killmonger proved his point, and Hela destroyed Asgard, but here's the thing. Those futures, those victories are nothing to Thanos. If anything, they too were reduced to dust. This is like if God came to Earth looking for a fight. What could we do in that situation? We could throw everything we have, destroy ourselves in the process, but it wouldn't faze him. That is Thanos. He is a force that has the ability to power through everything. Science, magic, human nature. He overcomes all of it for the ultimate power, the ultimate act of evil that creates his ultimate victory. He has kept all of us in suspense for a year, theorizing how the Avengers could seriously take down Thanos. Even then, the future looks bleak. This is a character whose very presence makes us think, oh god, who is going to die to try and stop him? Really think about this. For me, I can't think of an example, but is there a movie you saw in your life where you thought that statement? Who is going to be a sacrificial lamb just to put a dent in this guy because he's too damn strong? With actual consequences. Honestly, I can't think of anything new I can bring to the table. I don't want to be another echo chamber, but I'll reach that territory soon enough if I keep going. There are countless videos that dive into Thanos' character, each offering a full psych evaluation of the guy. I can't do that. I promise to be brief since we're covering almost every villain in the MCU. But I know what Thanos is about. You know what he's about. I don't need to waste 5 more minutes of our precious lives gushing over him. When Endgame comes out, I'm pretty sure I'll be talking about him again. Until then, well, let's just say his throne at the top isn't going anywhere. I honestly feel sad because from here on out, Thanos is the new standard for supervillains in a superhero movie, and I'm not too sure if competition can keep up. And there we have it, my personal ranking of the Marvel movie villains. You probably disagree with some of my choices, so let me know down in the comments. All that's left now is to take care of the hero side. God, I hope I can get that little project done before Endgame. Either way, thank you all so much for watching. I will see you legends next time. Take care.